This weakling has an absurd memory. So much so that when the Miram was destroyed, he had to memorize all the martial arts in the world, just so they wouldn't be lost. And in exchange, the Alliance would protect his family. But in the end, shocked by this ability, they killed him so he wouldn't leak anything, however. At the last second, he returns to the past with the martial arts, and all the events fresh in his mind. Now, that weakling who needed protection is going to turn the world upside down. But first, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video, which helps me a lot. And without further ado, let's get into the story. It all starts on a cliff with two people, haha, and the one standing called the Kneeling One Captain of the squadron, Jinsong, saying that his memory is truly remarkable, and thanks to you, they restored all the records of the Miram Alliance, and he is truly grateful to him. And this very serious guy is the leader of the Miram Alliance, the Divine Blue Sword, Yong-Su. He is the guy lying wounded on the ground whom he told to memorize it, so he went ahead and memorized everything. And when he told him to restore it, he went ahead and restored everything. But even so, this is how he repays him with such a pathetic death. And he is the captain of the squad, Jin Song. But then, the Alliance leader speaks, saying he heard he memorized the data of the Shim Yongai, where the ultra-secret information of the Miram Alliance was stored. And if someone like him were to collaborate with the demonic cult, their Miram Alliance could be in danger. Therefore, for the justice of the Jung-Hu and for the greater good and the safety of the Miram Alliance, he must disappear from this world. Along with his memories, and hearing this, Jin Song asks, "What do you mean, the greater good? And what on earth does this Miram Alliance mean? And what do you mean by danger?" The Miram Alliance was defeated by the demonic cult and fled to the ends of the earth, barely hanging on by a single thread. To think that there was still danger of falling, it is truly impressive. But the leader says, very pissed off, that the Miram Alliance will defeat the demonic cult and re-establish the foundation of the Miram. But our boy asks, if the Miram Alliance really sacrificed countless people as flesh shields while fleeing to the North Sea, and he is truly looking forward to it, because he wants to see how he will establish this greater good of his. But you know what? Seeing how you value this grand cause over human lives, I can't even tell which side is the demonic cult and which side is the Miram Alliance. And completely furious at these words, the leader says that he has already been corrupted by the demonic cult. But simply, our boy goes ahead and jumps off the cliff. But before that, he says that he entrusted the fate of his sect to the dirty hands of the Miram Alliance. And in the end, he regrets it, but at least his death, his damn death, he will decide it himself. And so, as he fell from the cliff, he thought about how life was hell, because he remembered everything. And when the war between justice and evil began, between the Miram Alliance and the demonic cult, his juniors and he, warriors of a weak and insignificant sect, were mobilized for the war. But the demonic cult was strong, and the Miram Alliance was very weak. Eventually, the Miram Alliance decided to flee to the North Sea. They were used as flesh shields to buy time, so that the high-ranking officials of the Miram Alliance could escape, and the damn Alliance, having fled to the North Sea, came to him with a proposal where he had to memorize all the records of the Miram Alliance, saying that if he memorized all of it and restored them at their base in the North Sea, they would remove his juniors of the Tile sect from the battlefield. So basically what Jin Song did, he desperately memorized everything. But in the end, this was all he gained. And in his final thoughts, he wonders if he should have gone to the battlefield instead of memorizing books in the library. If he had gone, he could have sacrificed himself to let at least one person escape. But in the end, he knows it's not like that. He should have practiced martial arts more diligently before then. It really sucks right now. Why did the heavens give him this kind of ability? If they really wanted to give him something, they could have given him a useful ability, like internal energy, facing death. Jin Song deeply regrets it, thinking, if only he were a little stronger. To save his juniors, he really should have become stronger during that time. Instead of begging others to protect them, he should have been the one protecting others. Not just them, but himself too. And apparently, this desire of his was stronger than he expected, because a few seconds after he closed his eyes, he wakes up again, looking at the clear sky, with several leaves on his head, and some youthful voices telling him to get up right now. There is a guy right in front of him, calling him an idiot and pointing a wooden sword at his head, saying that his juniors endured more than this, and that he is indeed pathetic. But our boy Jin Song begins to remember that this memory is truly a cursed one, and he stands up, gritting his teeth in anger. Because even now, at the moment of his death, this cursed memory makes him remember everything, from the very beginning, and it certainly hurts like hell. But when our boy looks forward, he notices something strange. He is surrounded by disciples of his own sect, and XLs quickly recognizes this place as the training ground of his tile sect. Looking back there, he sees some of his fellow disciples, and obviously, he gets very emotional about it. He immediately starts running to hug them. He recognizes the girl as junior sister Hong, and confused, she asks what he is doing. And on the other side is that idiot Guin, who asks his fellow disciple if something happened, and behind them, there are several other boys who are quite worried about him, asking what is going on. Our protagonist recognizes all of them as the juniors of the tile sect, and he remarks to himself, even though he is indeed a storehouse of memories, and this damn memory ability. But still, in the end, it turned out to be a good thing. But obviously, these words of his leave the others very confused. However, he simply starts poking the girl and says that anyway, junior sister Hong was cute, even when she was young, though he had never thought about it before, because she used to tease him all the time. He really misses her mischief from back then. As for the other boy, when they were young, Guyin wetting the bed was pretty annoying. But if he could really go back in time, he would wash the sheets 100 or 1,000 times if possible. But while our boy was just acting crazy, reminiscing about the past, the other kid, behind him with a wooden sword, asks if he is pretending to be crazy because he is afraid of the duel. Very arrogantly, this kid says that if he doesn't pick up his sword, right now, those juniors he cares so much about will become his opponents instead. Seeing this, our protagonist becomes quite displeased, thinking that this vision could have shown only good memories, instead of this pathetic idiot, whom he remembers very well as the precious young master of the merchant group, Guyin, who entered his sect through a massive amount of money, and this guy, relying on his father's money and power, beat the disciples of the tile sect almost to death, under the pretext of a duel, and they couldn't even resist out of fear of losing his sponsorship. Being cut off then, they just accepted the beatings in silence. But now, for our protagonist, it's just a memory. So then he turns around and says, of course, since he wants it so much, and if the heavens are forcing me to give you a beating, even as a memory, I cannot refuse this. So, why shouldn't he take a little revenge for his past as well? But hearing this, that brat gets very pissed off, finding him incredibly arrogant, and immediately charges at the protagonist. And Jin Song begins to observe his movements, and recognizes the sword technique that he suffered from in his past life, the Samyong sword, which is a martial art that the Goryong merchant group commissioned personally from the famous rogue warrior, Ansu. And it is suitable for a rogue style. And the sword strikes are rugged, and the movement is incredibly fierce. Furthermore, since it deliberately targets the eyes, the young disciples of the tile sect were left defenseless. And back then, he memorized the forms and breathing patterns as soon as he saw them, but he lacked the ability to dodge and counterattack. However, compared to those crazy bastards of the demonic cult, whom he faced since, then this boy's strike is nothing. So he easily dodges the strike, which leaves that brat very surprised. And once again, he remembers the past. That compared to the techniques, he had to memorize one by one in that damn library. This boy's strikes are nothing, and he can see everything clearly with his own eyes. So then, he charges at him with the sword technique of Soshian, the first basic form, and the brat is very surprised. After being hit, he recognizes it as the Soshian sword technique, but he finds it unbelievable, however. Soon after, our boy goes back to him, and with this crazy look on his face, says that this is indeed very good. And being able to defeat this guy with his own sword technique, Soshan is indeed magnificent and very satisfying. And basically, he strikes him on the head with his sword. But right after he attacks the brat, everyone goes silent, completely perplexed, and the rich kid starts screaming that he really attacked the eldest son of the grand merchant Guyok with that piece of trash Soshin sword technique, and now he must accept the consequences. Charging at our boy, saying this is all your fault. But basically, right after, he falls to the ground unconscious, leaving our boy completely lost. And simply seeing that fight, the disciples get very excited and start celebrating. saying our young master is indeed incredible, and they didn't know he was this strong, and some even apologize for thinking he was pathetic before. And with our protagonist in an extreme situation, thinking that being able to give Guyin a beating before going to the afterlife is indeed satisfying, and now he can die without regrets. But before he could wake up from this vision, he gets a hard punch to the face from his friend, who asks if by any chance he is crazy, and if the Goryong merchant group stops sponsoring them, they are completely screwed. And if he really thinks everyone else was a fool for just taking beatings from that idiot. But while she screamed and screamed, our protagonist noticed something strange, that this blow hurt, and finally, he understands that it's not just a vision, but reality and right, after she hits him. Even harder, wondering what kind of nonsense he is talking about now, and if by any chance he has gone crazy, and simply, our protagonist falls to the ground after the blow. And then, he understands that he has truly returned to the past. And so, later on, our boy was in a small room, quietly thinking about what had happened. Basically, he opened his eyes and found himself lying on an infirmary bed. From what he remembered, he passed out after being hit by his junior sister, and so he took this chance to clear things up and make sense of what had happened. First, it started with the revival of the demonic cult and the Muram alliance. The demonic cult was supposedly destroyed after losing the war and society. The Tile sect was also on the brink of ruin due to its affiliation with the Muram alliance. In the midst of this, having an unnecessarily good memory, he was assigned the mission of memorizing and restoring all the books belonging to the alliance. It even reached a point where he couldn't memorize any more, but even so, he declared he would engrave every book and document of the Muram alliance in his head without missing a single detail. And in return, all he asked was for them to please withdraw his juniors from the battlefield. However, they claimed that this memory could become an obstacle to the future of the Muram alliance. After that, he thought he had died. But when he opened his eyes, he had returned to the past. And thanks to the memories of the remaining martial arts manuals, in his head he defeated Guyin, whom he could never have originally beaten. But now, he really doesn't know what the hell is going on. And come to think of it, while his body and clothes went back to how they were before, only the blue dragon ring returned with him to the past, and that was from one of the few victories during the many battles against the demonic cult, the blue dragon ring. The bracelet of the demonic cult's guardian of the law, obtained as a trophy of that victory. And he remembers that this bracelet suddenly flashed intensely at the moment his life ended in his previous life. But why could this bracelet be related to his return to the past in some way? It might be true. But while he was thinking about it, he started hearing someone shouting in the background, saying that if they don't hand over that bastard, this won't end well, and that what he needs right now is to see the guy who cracked his son's head open. But the sect leader apologizes, saying it was a failure of his supervision, so he asks him to please speak with him instead of Jin Song. Then the merchant starts saying that he is forgetting the fact that although Guyin is temporarily registered in the Tile sect due to the circumstances, he is the legitimate son of their merchant group, living off their group's sponsorship, so they are cutting off their funding starting this month. And what does he think about that? But the sect leader says he knows that very well, and he will always be grateful for the merchant group's kindness. But seeing how Jin Song also passed out, it seems Gu Jane also struck Jin Song, so they should look after him strictly. And he asks him to please let it slide just this once. And our boy knows that one of them is the sect leader, and the other person is clearly Goyak, the father of Guyin, whom he punished just yesterday. And the merchant starts demanding that he punish that guy Jin Song, asking how a humble peasant dares to not even know his proper place. And that's why the Tile sect is in this state. If you, the sect leader, had taught him properly in the first place, none of this would have happened. And once again, the sect leader begs for forgiveness. Hearing all this, Jin Song gets really pissed off, commenting that since he was given a second chance at life, he obviously isn't going to let this slide, so he quietly gets up, wondering if he should shake things up right now. And so, later on, after the merchant leaves, the sect leader thanks him for his generosity. But right after the merchant leaves, he starts shouting that he will let it slide just this once. But to his surprise, the one who was waiting was our boy on top of the house, saying that he heard he was looking for him. desperately, and he basically appears right in front of him, saying that he is a humble commoner, Jin Song and the chubby guy. Very surprised, asks if it's really him. So you're the bastard who hurt my son? But our boy asks why he called him a bastard, and you're not even older than him, but right. After he thinks about it, he realizes that actually, he is older. Since he returned to the past, so he takes a step forward and says, anyway, making such a fuss over a single strike to the head during a duel, when senior brother Guyin enters the Miram Academy, later I suppose you plan to follow him there and make a scene too, and very pissed off. The merchant asks what he is talking about, and that he used a cowardly trick, under the guise of a duel, to crack his son's head open. And Guyin is a child, who doesn't even need to train martial arts in a place like the Tile sect. They only need to serve Guyin devotedly until he enters the Miram Academy. But our protagonist says that there are more than 10 juniors who couldn't get up for days after being hit by senior brother Gujane, and they were already talking about duels. He asks him to let him say one thing, entering the Miram Academy with martial arts skills that allow him to be defeated by a humble commoner from a third-rate city. He is apparently daydreaming. This makes the merchant more and more pissed off, calling him a brat and asking, how dare he act in such an arrogant manner? Do you think you can take responsibility? Even if our group cuts sponsorship with the Tile sect. But our boy asks, what do you mean, responsibility? And the fat guy says that although the Tile sect belongs to the Bek Palboon, it is still a third-rate sect, on the brink of extinction, and if he decides to, he can negotiate with any other sect at any time, but if that happens, your Tile sect will not even have tomorrow's meal to worry about right away, so he asks what he thinks of that. Then our boy begins to recall this concept of Bek Palbong, which refers to the 108 main sects of the Miram Alliance, and the Tile sect is one of them. In other words, the Tile sect is a third-rate sect that lost its past glory, and this Bek Palbong status is in name only. But anyway, there is a privilege that the Miram Alliance gives to these sects. During the entrance exam of the Miram Academy, each sect can recommend a disciple for special admission without a separate test. In other words, although Gu Yan is the legitimate son of a merchant group and does not originally belong to the Bek Palbong, he entered as a lay disciple of their insignificant sect after paying a massive sponsorship fee to enter the Miram Academy through special admission. However, now back to the present, our boy tells him to go ahead and do it, and surprised, the chubby guy asks what he was talking about, and he just talks about responsibility again, and he says that he will take responsibility from now on. But I'm really curious, since there is less than a year left for the special admission screening, so why did you send your son to such a pathetic place instead of many other Bek Palbong sects? It certainly wasn't because he was rejected by all the others, was it? Which made the old man more and more furious, while our protagonist remembers that in his past life, they catered to every whim of this damn merchant group, and the merchant asks how he can employ a brat so arrogant, and how he can speak so rudely in front of him. But regarding this, I think that, in reality, they recommended Guyin for a special mission, and placed him in the Miram Academy, and so no longer able to stand listening to any more of this. The merchant says that's enough, and asks if he doesn't know that the Miram Alliance doesn't even care about them anymore, and he must keep in mind that the only one who can save them is his Goryong merchant group, but our protagonist thinks that. However, after Guyin entered the Miram Academy, the merchant group ended up cutting their sponsorship anyway. Either way, he leans close to the merchant's ear and asks him to please keep this in mind. The only ones who can save the Goryong merchant group is his Tile sect, and leaving the guy completely pissed off behind, he thinks that it's no use begging for others to protect you, because you must have the power to protect yourself. Otherwise, money is completely useless. This is what our boy learned through a pathetic death. But now, later on, Jin Song heads toward the mountains, approaching a very strange cavern, and arriving there, he thinks that now his only task is to get stronger. However, it's difficult to get stronger just with his wasteful Tile mental technique and the Soshian sword technique. So, only one path remains: to obtain overwhelming internal energy through spiritual herbs. And the herb he is looking for is the legendary 10,000-year Fireblood herb. In the books of the spiritual herbs of the Jianghu, one of the secret documents of the Murim Alliance contained the description of the discovery, appearance times, and paths of movement of all the spiritual herbs that appeared in the Jianghu, and all of this content was perfectly stored in his head. So, he basically plans to recall the records from the book, find them, and eat the spiritual herbs, one by one. But now, he has a big problem with this, because there is a gigantic monster protecting it, and he thinks to himself, right, obtaining the 10,000-year fireblood herb is just the first step, and with the Soshin sword technique of his tile sect, he could subdue it in just one blow. But that was just a very shallow thought, because he knows there's no way that would work, and his internal energy and sword technique are both too weak. And he asks himself if there is really any need to waste his strength. That way he thinks not. So, he takes a piece of wood and sets the tip on fire, thinking that, as he remembered later, after putting hundreds of thousands of books into his head, remarkable swordsmanship isn't everything, and the path of the warrior, swordsmanship, he doesn't care about those things. But winning by any means necessary is all that matters. So he sets fire to the webs first, and the webs catch fire, until they cause this horrible monster to basically be burned alive. And our boy watches everything calmly and starts shouting, "Thank you very much, everyone," especially to the bastards of the Murim Alliance. And so, after a few hours, after Jin's song defeats this very strange spider, he finally consumes the herb and channels its power inside him. But finally, after a long time, he says, that's enough. And this shit isn't enough, falling into complete despair because he sees that his internal energy is only at this level, even after eating this precious thing, root and all, even after consuming something so good. It won't be absorbed. And as expected, the tile mental technique is trash, isn't it? It has too many problems. And actually, he might be trash. In reality, he realizes very sadly that at this rate, of the things that happened in the future, he won't be able to protect his tile sect, for he knows that as soon as the war between justice and evil begins, the low-ranking warriors will be used as flesh shields. And in this life, he must ensure that the disciples of the tile sect do not die meaninglessly. But to do that, he must become a key figure in the Murim Alliance before the war begins. So, this will be the only way to protect his tile sect. And he recognizes that the first step is to enter the Murim Academy within a year. But at this rate, he won't even be able to enter the Murim Alliance. And if this continues, he is definitely screwed. But even in despair, he begins to think of a solution, because he needs to increase his internal energy as soon as possible, and what he might need is a spiritual pill. And right. The spiritual pill from the MT Hua sect of Zhao Yang could be the solution. And it was definitely around. This time in the past, Zhao Yang's father spent a huge amount of money to buy the spiritual pill of MT Hua, the Xiaomai pill, for his son. But a day before Zhao Yang could consume it, the Xiaomai pill disappeared without leaving a trace, and the identity of the thief was never revealed. But since the incident hasn't happened yet, he also has a chance, because he knows that humans always leave traces. So, maybe he can find it. And so, he sort of enters his mental library, and he starts thinking about the monthly report of the subdivision in the Murim Alliance. He begins to run through various paths and many possibilities among his archives, and finally arrives at one of them. Because if he looks very closely at this place, there is definitely a clue somewhere in his memory. And perhaps it could be the entry and exit list of the Murim Alliance, the mission reports, or other things. All the records he remembers. He will combine and organize them using deduction. Thus he arrives at 3 possible names: the Wandering Soul Hunter, the 5 Swords of Jinjun. And then finally, after organizing his thoughts, our boy comments that serving as a mobile library would definitely be very useful. And now what he needs to do is get the pill. Plain and simple, but soon, after he calms down, he goes toward that beast to retrieve his weapon. But he soon notices something strange, which is his bracelet glowing out of nowhere. And he wonders why a light is coming from the golden dragon bracelet. But right after, a sort of mist comes out of it, and he asks himself, what is this? And to our boy's shock, that mist expands even more and begins to go toward the monster, basically consuming its energy. And soon, our boy notices that its energy, instead of blue, is now red, and apparently, It's absorbing the core of the human fist spider. Finally, after it absorbs everything, our warrior notices the difference in his body. And in his being, and very happy, he starts laughing out loud. Because this is unbelievable. And he knows that this was a trophy, obtained in a victorious battle after an arduous fight in the past, and the golden dragon ring, a relic of the blood-gambling demon, one of the Dharma protectors of the demonic cult. This bracelet, which he kept to commemorate his victory, and also his sacrifice suddenly activated out of nowhere. And now, to test its power, he destroyed a gigantic rock with just a single punch, and he realizes that the bracelet can perfectly detoxify the wicked core of the human fist creature he absorbed. And then this purified energy naturally mixes with the tile sex mental technique inside his body, and the result is that he thinks the heavens have not truly abandoned him, because now, thanks to the treasure of the demonic cult, his internal energy has become stronger. Meanwhile, back in the city, that merchant's son was bragging about his opportunities and asking the girl if she knew what the Xiaomai pill was. Within the MT, Hua sect, it is the second most effective pill to increase internal energy. After the Jazan pill, and it is a spiritual pill, so precious that only the true disciples of the MT Hua sect can obtain it. And that is the kind of rare spiritual pill it is, and his father obtained that rare medicine just for him, Guin. But as the girl listens to all of this, she thinks it sucks. Where is he, and what on earth is he doing right now? And she is obviously Hong Sarahong, the only daughter of the leader of the Tile sect, and she remembers that on that day, she should have stepped forward instead of senior brother, Jin, because she was the one who should carry the future of the Tile sect. And after the incident of that day, senior brother, Jin left the Tile sect. And since Guin visited the Tile sect every day, he thought he was being considerate in his own way, but he was very stupid, and obviously, that merchant's son is really into her, wanting to buy her with money. But simply to his surprise, a junior of the sect steps up to the girl, calling her senior sister, offering her good food, asking her to taste it, basically bypassing that idiot, who finds these brats very annoying. And shortly after, he leaves very pissed off. But then Hong says to them that they should eat their meal in the cafeteria, asking why they brought it all the way here, and she just asked them to eat quickly, since they are hungry. But a little girl approaches her and says she recognizes that look, and she asks if by any chance she is thinking about senior brother Jin again, which makes Hong very embarrassed, saying she isn't, but the kids, basically drooling over the food, say that senior brother Jin hasn't returned yet, and hasn't had dinner either, so they should save some rice cakes for him when he gets back. And another kid comments that this meat is senior brother Jin's favorite, and it would be mean if he ate it all alone. He will wait for his return. But seeing this, Hong simply steals their rice cakes, which surprises both of them greatly. So, she says that if they don't eat right now, she will steal everything from them. This made the kids very scared, and they quickly started eating, while Hong wonders what on earth that guy is doing, leaving the children behind worried about him, and that Jin song is truly a liar. Meanwhile, that night, the merchant leader was very excited about his son's future possibilities. After taking that pill, and while this tremendous party was going on, there was a guy leaping across the roofs, who was obviously a bandit. And basically, after a while, he reaches the forest and starts laughing to himself, commenting that, so this is that famous pill of Mount Hua, and this guy is the soul hunter. Now that he opens it to see the pill, he gets more and more excited, because he knows that if he takes this spiritual pill, he will have enough internal energy to learn a new secret technique of the divine palm, of the mad heavens, and now it's time to get out of there. But to his surprise, someone was already waiting for him, who quickly cut off his head. And after he took the pill, he tells the guy that he is sorry, but this thing will have to go with him, because he needs it after the theft from the thief is completed. To help us understand this, let's go back a few days ago, before the theft incident, when our protagonist was at a certain weapon shop. Arriving there, he opens the door and says he came here after hearing that they deal in hard-to-find items, and he asks if by any chance they have traps to catch people. And so the shop owner asks, "What do you mean traps? To catch people? You are indeed an interesting customer, and this shop is the best shop. They have all kinds of traps, from ones for small rabbits to ones for bears. The size of a mountain, except for people, but our boy goes and hands him a lot of money and asks him to please give him some traps to catch tigers or bears, and the shopkeeper asks if by any chance he is going hunting and says that with these traps, the pelts will be ruined. But our boy says he isn't going to skin them, so it doesn't matter. He just needs something that activates by touch, even if a single strand of hair falls on it, powerful enough to tear off a bear's leg, but maybe something that can send them to the afterlife in a single blow, and that's what he wants. The salesman got a bit scared by this, with his 27-year veteran intuition kicking in right away because he feels he shouldn't be selling this to this kid, but even so, he went ahead and sold it. So now, back to the present. The person who robbed the thief himself was actually not our boy, but another guy, saying that he heard he was quite famous in Yangon, so he thought it would be very difficult. But in the end, it worked out very well, and right after, another guy approaches, saying, "As expected of you, senior brother," and he comments that it was way too easy. And these two are from the 5 Swords of Jungsong, and the leader at the front says that they were worried over nothing, considering that they are the 5 Swords of Jungsong. But first, we need to get rid of the bodies, and the wandering soul hunter must be listed as missing for now, and his junior brother says that before that, they should take a look at the precious sumai pill. And finally, when they open the case, they become very happy, because seeing its brilliant color and the strong scent of plum blossoms, this is definitely the sumai pill from the Mount Hua sect that they were looking for. But little did they know, they had a third person watching as well, commenting 2 mouths, but only 1 pill. And finally, the 2 notice something wrong and right after they attack, asking, "Who's there?" while our protagonist gives them a little wave right after stealing the box, which leaves the brothers in shock, and the older one orders the younger one to catch him right now because he can't escape. And this little brat will pay the price for starting something beyond his position, because this is something he shouldn't have. Only the 2 of them should, but our proto asks, "What do you mean you are just some more thieves? But you're being a pretty shameless bastard right now." And he asks if that's what they were taught in Jungsong, since they were the first ones to use underhanded tricks. But obviously, these 2 guys are more experienced than Jinsong, so they quickly close in on him. But at the last second, he manages to dodge the blow and tells them, "I'm warning you, watch where you step." And after the guy steps on that trap, his leg is almost torn off by it. And finally, when he sees the blood, he starts screaming in pain, while his senior brother runs over to him asking if he is okay. And our boy mocks them, saying that he just warned him to watch where he steps. But apparently you didn't see it, and gnashing his teeth, that guy says that he doesn't know who he is or what he is, but he's a truly cowardly fellow, and being a warrior, holding a sword yet using tricks as petty as this, he orders him to take off his mask and reveal his identity right now. But our protagonist simply picks up a rock and asks what he means by that. And simply, he speaks mockingly, pretending to be some random disciple from who knows where, and right after, he throws that rock right at that guy's feet, telling him to screw off right now. But the guy's reaction was fast, and he managed to dodge the trap that almost tore off his leg too. And while he is deeply shaken, our boy declares that he is the new owner of the sumai pill, and those 2 are killers who murdered the wandering soul hunter and are now on their way to prison. And he asks what they think about that. But how did Jinsong know that they were the real culprits? Well, basically through his extraordinary memory, because he found something strange. When reviewing the records, from the moment the sumai pill was stolen, the tracks of the wandering soul hunter completely disappeared. Furthermore, there was no emergence of any other expert who seemed to have consumed the sumai pill. So, he searched the records of all the warriors who had even the slightest increase in internal energy during the same period, and ended up finding their tracks. It was highly probable that the wandering soul hunter had been buried after being murdered, and assuming that at least 2 people shared the same pill, those who had a reasonably fast increase in internal energy. At the same time, without any specific reason, though not enough to attract public attention. Were these 2 idiots from the 5 Swords of Jungsong? And our protagonist tells the 2 of them that of course he knows them very well, since they are 2 of the 5 Swords of Jungsong from the Jungsong sect. And the senior brother says that since he knows that, yet still dares to interfere in their business, He asks if by any chance he isn't afraid of the revenge of Jungsang and the Miram Alliance. But our protagonist replies that he didn't know a thief could report another thief who caught him while committing a robbery. But to Jin Song's surprise, the younger one charges right at him, saying that these are just petty tricks, and he delivers a powerful punch to the ground, triggering all the traps early, which leaves our protagonist quite surprised, and now much more excited. He declares that this is the end for Jin Song. Meanwhile, our boy thinks that this sucks, as the traps were triggered ahead of time, and that guy, even though injured, comments that next he is going to rip off that mask and then roast him limb by limb. So he'd better be ready, but looking at this very seriously, our guy only thinks of one thing: running away from there as fast as possible. But obviously the two of them won't let it slide. However, the junior tells his senior brother to be careful, because that guy is going in a direction that is covered by leaves. So there might still be traps. But the senior brother asks why worry, when he can just follow the footsteps he took. And that is very simple. The junior brother comments that he is very smart. And basically they go, following the steps that our boy takes, getting closer and closer to him. And finally our boy stops, and they, very excited, ask what he has to say now, the situation. Is that his life? Ends here? But what they didn't know was that the position our boy was standing in was where he could trigger all the remaining traps. So he steps outside of his own footstep, and with a little smile on his face, he knows he has one, and this is the end. And in this manner, the traps are triggered, and that is how it ends. In this way, the traps are sprung, catching all of them by surprise, trapping their arms, legs, and bodies on the ground. And as we understand, they ask how this is possible, while our boy calmly approaches them. When did they actually scare him? And they were smarter than he thought. And to think that if they moved, just by following his footsteps, they were almost right. But the thing they unfortunately missed is that among the traps, the place where he stepped, you had to step exactly without an inch of error, and completely terrified. The little brother asks how this is possible. This is completely crazy. And if he really prepared the trap so densely just to begin with, but how on earth can he move with such precision? And our girl says it's because his memory is the unique gift that heaven gave him, and finally finishes off those two. But while this was happening, in another location in the morning, an old man was asking, "What do you mean, Tile Sect? Does it really still belong to one of the 108 main sects?" And this guy asking was the strategist, the chief of the Miram Alliance, and right ahead, an elder of the Miram Alliance. Nangang Tian talks to the strategist, saying that it's correct, that's exactly right. But as he knows, haven't many powerful sects emerged as well? And now, the time has come to replace it with a new main sect, but still, the strategist remains silent, thinking that if it's a sect expanding its power, he must be talking about the Iron Sword sect. And it seems that the rumors circulating within the Miram Alliance were true, and so the elder says that these tea leaves, which he took a lot of trouble to get for him, he asks if they are to his liking. And the strategist finally realizes that the story about Nangang Tian supporting the Iron Sword sect was apparently true. But in this manner, the strategist says that he must know that the principle is not to replace a sect among the 108 main sects unless it commits a grave error. So, I wonder if by any chance, could the Tile sect have committed such an error? And Nangang says that the truth is, there are rumors that the Tile sect is using its special admission rights to conduct business for profit, which surprises the strategist, asking if he means that the Tile sect is using its privilege as one of the 108 main sects to satisfy its own greed. And listening to this question of his, Nangang gets quite excited, because he is going exactly where he wanted him to go. After staying silent for a while, Nangang, being very clever as he is, asks that please. He doesn't misunderstand. It's not as if he were mentioning this, because he wants to place another sect among the 108 main sects. Obviously, he doesn't want that, guys. And he says that. It's just that the reason why the Miram Alliance granted privileges to the 108 main sects was to commemorate the fact that they fought together during the most dangerous and difficult times in the past, and he is truly desolated, as a member of the Miram Alliance, that this meaning is being tarnished at this time. But while all these schemes were happening, behind the scenes, our boy was quietly at an inn, ingesting his new spiritual pill. And after consuming it for a while, our boy finally wakes up and says that the sumai pill is famous for a reason. It's approximately a little more than half a cycle. And finally, he surpassed the internal energy of his past life. And so, after he goes down the stairs, he runs into a boy who wakes up with a start, asking if the young Mester finally came out. There, Annie asks in surprise, how he could spend several days there without eating anything, and he thought something had happened. While our boy thinks that a lot of things happened. To tell the truth, but he just asks him to bring something to eat. Now, but the kid, a bit uncomfortable, says that it's already very late, and the kitchen is closed, but Jin simply says that he will compensate him enough, and he will also pay for a week of lodging, in meals in advance, which makes the kid very happy, asking why that cook is sleeping so early, and that he will wake him up immediately. Meanwhile, our very wise boy already thinks, as expected, there is nothing in this world that cannot be bought with money, and he is glad to have prepared this money in advance using the blue dragon ring, and after a few tests, he realized that it doesn't only work on demons, and he can extract the vitality of any living creature and absorb it as his own energy. And the tiger skin is also a great bonus. And well, it's good that he found a way to make money. But the problem now is that the power of the blue dragon ring is a very dangerous ability that could easily be mistaken for a technique of the demonic cult, an ability that is extremely dangerous, and one of the 10 forbidden techniques chosen by the Muram Alliance, the great soul absorption art. But the ability of the blue dragon ring does not look like anything other than the great soul absorption art. And if the Muram Alliance finds out, not only he, but everyone in the sect will be in danger. So, he knows he must never be caught with it. And finally, after a while, the kid comes back with the food and asks, how is it, the chef? Really outdid himself this time. And our boy is very happy with this grand feast, in front of him, saying that it looks very delicious. But right after, he starts to observe the kid, who is looking intently at him. And this kid asks if he has heard about that rumor, by any chance, and asks, what rumor is that? And the boy says that the Goryong merchant group held a banquet recently, after obtaining a precious spiritual pill. However, he heard that the spiritual pill was stolen. During the banquet, just imagine that. To steal a spiritual pill from a place so crowded without anyone noticing, they must be very skilled. And anyway, the investigation team from the Muram Alliance appeared to handle the matter, and also to catch the culprit, which makes our protagonist almost die of fright right now. And the startled kid asks if he is okay, and if he wants to drink some water, but our protagonist says, no, it's fine. He wants him to keep talking about what happened recently. He wants to know what the Muram Alliance did. And the kid says that the investigation team from the Muram Alliance appeared and tracked down the culprit. Hearing this, Jin Song realizes that if they caught someone, it's a complete disaster, since he is the real thief. That means they caught an innocent person. And the kid says, they said the trail went cold quickly, and they couldn't find anything, which was definitely a huge relief for Jin Song. But on the outside, he says, wow, the owner must be completely devastated by this. And the boy says yes, and right. After the banquet ended very early, and because of that, they lost a lot of customers, which was a huge pity. But fortunately, he came to say that another banquet will be held. And Robbie and our curious protagonist asks, what do you mean? Another banquet. And the kid says that this time, it's at the Iron Sword sect, which leaves Jin Song in shock, remembering the past. And the boy, who didn't notice his reaction, commented that he heard the leader of the Iron Sword sect is celebrating his 60th birthday, so they will have a banquet for 7 days and nights, and they are expecting a busy season. For now, but in Jin Song's mind, he remembers that it was indeed around this time that it happened. At the 60th birthday banquet of the leader of the Iron Sword sect in his previous life, his own father was humiliated in front of everyone and had to kneel before countless people and apologize to the leader of the Iron Sword sect because of none other than himself, his son Jin Song, and clenching his fists in anger, he thinks that if it's like that this time, he will not accept the Iron Sword sect, no matter what happens, and he will never step foot in that place again. He will not let his father suffer so much humiliation because of him, because that certainly cannot happen. But that was what he thought that day. But now, why on earth, at the 60th birthday banquet of the sect leader of the Iron Sword sect, is he in a duel against the grandson of the leader of the Iron Sword sect, also in front of countless people? But before that, a few days ago, back at the Tile sect, all the juniors were training with their swords, and after a long time of training, everyone is very tired, and these three are the brothers, Gian, Ian, and Dong. And Gian says that doing 100 vertical strikes in this weather, he wonders if it really helps him train the Soshin sword technique. But down there, Guin starts his lecture, asking where that guy went. Who said he wanted to be cool? Just like senior brother Jin. And the kid, very embarrassed, says that when he said he wanted to be as cool as him, he only said he was proud. As a disciple of the Tile sect, because he gave a beating to senior brother Gyu and mastered the Soshin sword technique. But Guin says that this is basically saying he is cool and up there. The youngest Dong asks what they think senior brother Jin is doing right now. And he says very sadly that it's not even the first time this has happened, and he hasn't returned for more than a week, without even saying for how long. And Ian wonders if by any chance he is feeling awkward about hitting senior brother Gyu and is not returning on purpose. And Ju asks if they think he abandoned the sect for good, because he is worried that the Goryong merchant group might take revenge on them for what he did. But Gu asks what the hell he is talking about, and that senior brother Jin was annoying at times, but he was a good person only. To everyone's surprise, Dong stands up immediately, saying that that is senior brother Jin. And at that moment outside the sect, our boy calmly walks in, thinking that if he doesn't go to the Iron Sword sect, this time his father won't be ridiculed and forced to apologize. However, that was just one of the many things they did to humiliate them. And even after that, the entire Tile sect continued to suffer insults, both big and small. And he knows there is no longer any need to complicate things, because he has already decided that he is not going to the Estet, Iron Sword sect, and not just him, but the entire sect. And they must not attend the birthday banquet. And for that to happen, he needs a good excuse. But as our boy walked in, the three already appeared in front of him, worried, asking where he had been. While Jin Song asks if, by any chance, they came to greet him because he was away for so long, and even the other junior brothers came to welcome him back. And he is truly deeply moved. He starts joking around with everyone, asking if they are okay, and if they had been listening to the pavilion leaders, and the kids say yes, of course, just as he told them to do, and watching him. It was his own father, asking quite angrily where on earth he had been wandering off to before finally coming back. And the father of our protagonist is the leader of the external pavilion of the Tile sect, Gin Taizan. As soon as our boy looks at him, he gets very emotional. Meanwhile, his father, without showing any particular reaction, asks what on earth is going on, and why he is acting as if he were reuniting with family. After a long time, but in the head of our protagonist, he never imagined that one day he would want to hug his father so much. And a second life is truly a beautiful thing. But right then, he gets a smack on the head with his father, shouting and asking if he thought acting like a madman would get him out of cleaning up the mess he made, thanks to the trouble he caused with the merchant group. The entire Tile sect almost ended up on the streets, and the other pavilion leaders are making a huge fuss all the time, demanding that he catch him and crack his head open right away. But at that moment, Guyin also appears, looking surprised, because our boy has just returned. And he says very angrily that he has been waiting for him. And he asks what kind of cheap trick he used last time, but this time we are going to have a real duel. Except our boy simply starts laughing and pretends to be startled by his brilliance. And Guyin asks what the hell he is doing now. Our protagonist says that he can't even look at him right now, because he is blinded by his master aura. And the effects of the pill are truly incredible. He asks how he could ever defeat someone as strong as him, which makes the kid turn red with anger. And, on top of that, extreme embarrassment. So he storms out of the sect, stomping his feet in rage. But his friend Hong Sarahong asks why he is provoking him, and if he didn't see that Guy Yun's pill was stolen earlier. And our dear protagonist says that he did see it, and that is exactly why he brought it up to him. Meanwhile, his father, witnessing this scene, just snorts at his son, asking why this boy has been acting so strangely lately, and the girl says she doesn't know either, but well, he's always been a bit strange anyway. Just at that moment, our boy calls out to the children, saying he has plenty of sweets for them, and he asks them to share them properly warning that anyone who keeps it all for themselves will have to deal with him seeing this. His father gets even more annoyed, saying that if he had that much money, he should have bought rice instead of sweets. And his curious friend asks what all this is, and where he got the money to buy these things. But Jin Song just tells her to stop fussing, and have a sweet too, but when he turns to her, he notices she is acting quite strange, and she just tells him to forget it, because she only wants him not to go away again right now. Even the merchant group is busy, dealing with the incident of the Sumai pill, and preparing for the birthday banquet of the leader of the Iron Sword sect. So they hardly even visit the Tile sect anymore. And the sect leader also says that they no longer need to walk on eggshells around them because of this problem. So he doesn't need to carry everything on his shoulders alone. And she says to him, full of shyness, that he must never disappear suddenly. Like that again, which surprises our boy, who starts to get emotional. But right after, he thinks that although he never walked on eggshells, he didn't try to carry everything alone either. But anyway, he quickly changes the subject, asking, by the way, is it only the merchant group going to the birthday banquet? But she says she heard that their young lady, the Tile sect also, would attend, which surprises the father and son greatly. And our protagonist realizes that it sucks. So, in the end, it's already decided. And she says that the sect leader was reluctant. But if he, out of rudeness, simply doesn't show up, there must be a concrete reason. But in Jin Song's mind, he knows he needs to make up an excuse. Either way, so he won't go to that place. Just at that moment, his father turns around and says that he will go to the headquarters of the Iron Sword sect, and the rest must stay here. But at this, Jin Song asks what he is talking about. But while he was worried about his father, one of the kids runs up to him, offering some stale food, and he says to our protagonist, "These are rice cakes." And our boy, surprised, asks, "What is this?" And the girl asks if by any chance it is a rice cake from the merchant group's banquet. And the kid says they said it was very delicious, and he wanted to eat it with him, so he kept it and saved it, waiting for him. But he brought many expensive sweets, so you probably should throw this away. And Jin Song, deeply moved, asks if he really didn't eat it, and saved it all this time just to eat it with him and the kid. Says that honestly, if he had returned a day later, maybe he wouldn't have resisted. And our boy asks, "Is that so?" And he simply takes that paper and eats it all at once and tells the kid that it was delicious. But the surprised kid says that he ate it all, including his share, but our boy just apologizes and says it was so good that he ended up eating it all by himself. But in exchange, you can have this share of the sweets, which makes the kid very happy, already running toward the sweets. And right after he leaves, Jin Song tells Hong that even if they skipped this banquet next time, and after that time, the Iron Sword sect, really, will continue inviting them to their banquets. And she says that if there is something to celebrate, probably yes. And our guy says that, just as he thought, he cannot let that happen. And she, surprised, asks what he is talking about. And Jin Song says that they would have to endure endless insults, 10 or 100 times over. And those children too? This is simply absurd. So, we will go to the headquarters of the Iron Sword sect. And in the end, our protagonist still had to go to that place. And on the fateful day of the birthday, there was a sort of procession going on toward the headquarters of the Iron Sword sect, and in the middle of the procession, our boy was talking to another guy who tells him that there is one thing he must obey when they arrive at the sect, and our protagonist asks what it would be. This old man ordered him not to act recklessly under any circumstances, and he is the leader of the pavilion. Gay Seo Kang and Jin asks if it isn't a bit too obvious that his words are meant for him, and he asks if he came to this banquet. This time, just to keep an eye on him, the old man says that he is crossing the line, and asks why he suddenly wanted to come along. But our boy says that he is really too much leader of the pavilion, and he explains that he also wants to hold himself back. But what should he do if people keep provoking him? And the old man says that this is exactly what he is telling him to restrain himself from, since he has caused a lot of trouble recently and didn't even return home. But our boy says that he never cared whether he came home or not before. Why are you like this all of a sudden? But over in the corner, he notices his father looking very serious and even a bit nervous, and he wonders if it's just his imagination. But he has been extremely quiet since they decided to come to the headquarters of the Iron Sword sect. But obviously not listening to the old man starts hitting his head, saying that apparently he has entered his rebellious phase again. But at that moment, while they were walking, 3 other guys approached them saying, "Excuse me, please," and he asks them to step aside so that they can pass. Because they have a companion who is already saving their spot up ahead, but the leader of the pavilion asks what kind of nonsense this is. And if he is saying that this entire crowd is going to cut the line just like that, but the kid says that he just said that he has a companion of his up ahead, saving the spot, but the leader of the pavilion, very annoyed, says there's a limit to such shamelessness. He wants to know if he is trying to cut the line right in his face. Like that? Just at that moment, another person interrupts them, saying that's enough explaining things, and that they traveled a long way. And due to fatigue, they sent someone ahead to save the spot, and he says that he is Go Yang-sa of the Shangjak Fortress. Surprisingly, the merchant leader and his son recognize right away this name, and the merchant goes up to him and says that Shangjak Fortress is the sect most prestigious in Nanjing of Jiangsu province, and he begs him to please excuse the rudeness, and says they can pass through freely. And this kid, very smug, says that at least someone here has some sense. However, watching from afar, our great opponent is from Shangjak Fortress, especially this bastard Go Yang-sa, the son of the fortress master, who is complete trash and later hangs around with Guyin as if they were sworn brothers. And together with Guyin, he treated the disciples of his sect like mere servants, and he also starts overhearing the others' conversation, talking about that merchant leader who completely froze. The moment he heard his name, he is indeed a pig of a merchant leader, in a sect that clearly looks pathetic. But wait, those uniforms. They are from the tile sect of the 108 sects. They ask if it isn't this sect that everyone wonders how it managed to enter the 108 sects, and at this rate, their place might be taken by another sect, especially the Iron Sword sect. But that was basically the last straw for our protagonist, who quickly cleared a path for himself, asking where exactly this so-called Shangjak Fortress is, since it's a sect he has never heard of, before he asks if, by any chance, he can repeat it, which certainly makes the master's son very pissed off. And our boy then startles everyone by saying, wait, I'm sure I've heard that name before. Ah, that's right. I know that name. It's from the middle of nowhere. This obviously leaves everyone perplexed on the spot, and the guy, in a fit of rage, draws his sword, asking how this bastard dared to insult his fortress. Just at that instant, behind them, a girl appears, asking what all this commotion is about. Immediately, the guy stops his strike, and the people around recognize the girl as the beautiful wolf of the Yont Iron Sword sect, and so she approaches them and says that they will all see her grandfather's birthday banquet, asking if they are really expecting to see blood shed. And this girl is Seong Moran, the granddaughter of the sect leader, and from Jin Song's memories, he knows that the Iron Sword sect is a rising sect that emerged a mere 150 years ago, and they didn't hold a grudge against the Tile sect. But the fact that they settled in the same region was a big problem, because basically, there cannot be two suns under the same sky, and the Iron Sword sect was not satisfied with just expanding its influence. It wanted to take over the Tile sect's status among the 108 sects of the Murim Alliance, and even before his regression, the Tile sect attended the birthday banquet of the sect leader and Hong Guin, and he participated in the banquet for people of their age, and there he had an argument with the grandson of the leader of the Iron Sword sect, the blood wolf of the Iron Sword sect, Xiao Mujin, where the grandson of the sect leader insulted his sect and challenged him to a duel. And obviously he accepted the fight, although he knew he would lose, but to stop the fight, his father found out about it, knelt in front of everyone, and apologized to the leader of the Iron Sword sect in front of countless people, and he thinks that it will certainly be no different this time. And right then, that guy from the fortress recognizes the girl as the beautiful wolf of the Iron Sword. He starts to speak, very embarrassed, that it was all his fault. But she says right away that the Iron Sword sect has no rules about reserving spots in line, so they must go to the back of the line right now and be patient. And she turns to our boy and says she was late in introducing herself, but she is Xiao Moran of the Iron Sword sect, and she apologizes for what just happened. And it's an exaggeration to call this compensation, but she asks if she can listen to the people of the Tile sect and the merchant group, so she does exactly that, listening to everyone while Gujane, right by her side, trying to flirt with the girl, comments on what he heard about the beautiful flower among the wolves of the sect, and it seems that the rumors fell far short of her real beauty, and she tells him that he is very kind. And she tells the young leader of the sect that she is looking forward to welcoming the people from the merchant group in the tile sect, so they can go ahead, and our boy in the back recognizes her as the granddaughter of the sect leader, and before his regression, Seong Moran had absolutely no relation to the tile sect, and he wonders if, by any chance, his actions influence something, or maybe she has another motive. But after a while, they finally arrive at the venue, and she says it's over there, and Hong Sarahong, quite surprised, says that it's huge, while the pavilion leader says it has become much larger than before. But our protagonist knows that this is certainly not goodwill without a reason, and he will have to keep observing her for now. And so, inside the banquet hall of the Iron Sword sect, the girl introduces everyone, saying that the one in the center with the white beard is her grandfather, and the person next to him is her father, the young leader of the sect. And at that moment, passing by the others, the merchant and his son take a step forward, asking the young sect leader if he has been well during this time, since it has been a while since they last saw each other. And the girl's father recognizes the merchant immediately and tells him to set formalities aside, asking why he built such a wall between them. He goes up to Gu Yin and says that even now, when he thinks about having lost a talent like him, he gets so angry that he can't sleep at night. And seriously, if it weren't for the absurd privileges of the 108 sects, he would have accepted him as his disciple. He is really dying of envy that the tile sect obtained such a treasure while just sitting back. But at that moment, his daughter takes a step forward and says that these are the people of the tile sect, and he should say hello to them too. But her father simply looks with disgust and disdain and asks, "What do you mean, tile sect?" But at that moment, the pavilion leader, our protagonist's father, takes a step forward, introducing himself to him, and the young leader of the sect says he has seen the pavilion leader a few times in the Marine Alliance in Eugene Taizan. Apparently, it has been 20 years since that incident. But our protagonist, very lost, wonders, "What do you mean, incident?" And the young leader begins to ask how that fellow sect leader, Hong, has been doing lately, and looking closely at the young woman he brought. This time, she is the sect leader's daughter. And he asks, "Who is this other one?" That must be that child, the son of the external pavilion leader. Just by looking at them, their comprehension seems quite disappointing. And don't tell me that these children are really their most outstanding prospects. And it's quite obvious what one gains by developing within the tile sect. In any case, he should not waste his energy on useless things, and just focus on backing the Gu boy. And backing him definitely does not mean teaching martial arts of the tile sect, because if he diligently trained that sort of thing, they don't want him to end up like a third-rate martial artist. But while he was talking a lot of crap, our boy couldn't stand it anymore and says, "Good grief, no." It's as if he were some kind of street thug from a back alley. Right, but every word he spits out is very annoying, which makes the old man very pissed off, asking what the hell he just said. But our boy takes a step forward and apologizes. He intended to say that in his head, but it ended up slipping out, and the old man asks if by any chance that is an excuse. But our boy says that, well, honestly, maybe it's true, because just a moment ago, he called my junior sister's father and the leader of the tile sect leader Hong as if he were a friend. He asked about the achievements of the other party, which is something that martial artists should not ask, recklessly. And finally, he didn't just pretend to know, but belittled and ignored the martial arts of our sect. And he asks, "Doesn't anyone feel displeased hearing such things?" Still, according to the words of the sages, one should not treat even an arrogant and rude person with discourtesy. This clearly is my fault. So he offers his sincere apologies, and looking around at the people, they ask who the hell this boy is, and that he is really audacious, calling the people from the Iron Sword sect Backley thugs. But sitting up there, watching everything, the leader of the sect gets very serious, while the young leader gets very pissed off, almost wanting to charge at our protagonist. Meanwhile, Jin Song, quite confident, looks him straight in the eyes, eye to eye, asking if he won't accept his apologies. And the guy, completely out of control, calls him an ill-mannered brat, almost attacking him with that cup right there. At that instant, the door is thrown open all at once, announcing to the sect leader that the chief strategist of the Murim Alliance has just arrived. So everyone gets excited, and the sect leader stands up immediately and asks what the hell they are doing. They must hurry and greet the chief strategist. So Just like that, everyone who is in the room starts running outside, while our boy and his friend Hong watch everything, and after they leave, they are left alone with the sect leader's granddaughter, and Hong asks if they shouldn't go too, but Jin Song says that there will be hundreds of people running to form connections with the chief strategist anyway, and it's 100 times better to just go in and get a good seat first. But at that moment, the pavilion leader grabs him and asks what the hell he was thinking, using such language with the young sect leader, and that he has already told him several times to behave himself, but our boy tells him to be honest. When he was speaking to him earlier, he saw everything from behind, and if he hadn't intervened, he would have drawn his sword, and our boy thinks that the damn young sect leader must have noticed that, and he probably kept talking, hoping someone would attack him, and in this manner, he starts speaking very seriously, that he must not act recklessly, and asks if he really cannot see that the Iron Sword sect is blatantly trying to provoke them. And what he is saying is not to screw up and to act like a righteous warrior as much as possible, and the embarrassed old man says that he knows that, but our curious protagonist asks what happened 20 years ago, as he had a bitter expression on his face during the entire reception. And hearing this, the old man turns to his father, but his father just shakes his head and simply remains silent. But at that moment, interrupting the conversation, Seong Moran asks, "How about we talk inside?" and says she will take them to a nice place. And the old man, sounding like a robot, says that is great. And since she is offering to guide them, they should hurry up and follow her. And so, later on, in a large room, our boy thinks that this is a very pleasant VIP seat, with a clear view of a large, beautiful lake, and these are delicacies they normally wouldn't even dream of seeing, so he is truly in doubt as to why the people of the Iron Sword sect are treating them so well. And now at the table, Seong Moran stares at our boy and asks what his name is, and he says it is Jin Song, but anyway, he asks if she shouldn't be seeing the chief strategist of the Murim Alliance right now, but she says that the rules of the sect say that women are not included in important matters anyway, so she won't be punished just for not being there. And then another memory came to our boy about the young leader of the Iron Sword sect, who has 2 grandchildren, the Blood Wolf, Seong Mujian, and the beautiful wolf, Seong Moran. And he knows that the Blood Wolf grew up monopolizing all the resources of the Iron Sword sect, and he is considered the one who will eventually inherit the sect. On the other hand, the beautiful wolf, Seong Moran, despite having started her internal energy training at the late age of 9, she believes that later on she will enter the Murim Academy alongside the Blood Wolf, and so he tells her that the beautiful wolf's teeth are sharper than the Blood Wolf's to receive such well-deserved treatment from someone like you might actually be a good thing from the standpoint of the Tile sect. And she says very cheerfully that he really thinks highly of her, and she asks if by any chance he is interested in her, but our boy said he was only sharing the rumors that he frequently heard, and the girl laughs and says that, in short, she apologizes on behalf of her grandfather for what happened earlier. And because of how they interacted with the merchant group in the past, he must have acted that way, because he deeply regrets losing his brother, Gwyn. But our boy says that it isn't too late, even now, so she can simply take him, but she just keeps laughing, saying that he really jokes too much. But then Jin Song goes ahead and says that, anyway, there is one thing he is curious about. He asks what the intention of the Iron Sword sect is by inviting the Tile sect here, and she says calmly that it is a banquet, and it is more meaningful when many people gather to celebrate. But our boy counters that many assassinations in history occurred during banquets, which makes her very serious, and she stands up right away, saying that he really is an interesting person, young warrior Jin, and she would like to share a meal with him to ease his suspicions. But now it's time to go. The lady asks to be excused and leaves. And right after she exits, junior sister Hong finds our protagonist and asks, "What do you mean by calling her young lady?" which leaves our young protagonist completely lost. But later that night, several young guys start talking about how Lady Song is just as exceptionally beautiful as the rumors say, and basically everyone starts flirting with her, wanting a chance. But little do they know that the young lady has already slipped away, while the maid starts shouting her name, asking where she is, and up there on the roof, she remarks to herself that finally she can breathe now, and to think that among all those people, she doesn't think there is a single decent man, let alone a true warrior, besides. Moreover, the young Master Jin's song of the Tael sect was quite interesting. His internal power seems insignificant, but in front of Go Yongza of the Changjok fortress, and even in front of her own father, the leader of the Iron Sword sect, he never lowered his head and was truly confident. But she wonders if he really doesn't fear the Iron Sword sect. Or maybe he is just a madman, except at that moment she notices that at the youth banquet, the ones entering are Guyin and Hong Sarahong, and not Jin Song. And thinking about it, those men mentioned something about the banquet earlier, and she thinks her brother told him that he would gather only young disciples to drink tonight. But why are only those two going? And she wonders if that guy really isn't going, becoming excited about this. She says that this should be fun, and so, later, someone knocks on the protagonist's room door, and he asks curiously who it is, and as soon as he opens it, he is quite surprised, because the one at the door was Lady Song Moran, and he, very confused, asks what she is doing here so late at night. And she answers that her sect prepared a banquet for young rising stars to make friends, and she thought it would be good if young Master Jin joined them, but our boy thanks her. But he will have to decline right away. It has been a long day with many events, so both he and the disciples of the sect are physically and mentally exhausted. But she asks, "What do you mean, all of them?" And if that is really true, because I saw Lady Hong walking over there, which greatly surprises our boy, who basically starts following her, while thinking that before his regression, he couldn't contain himself against the provocations of her brother at this exact banquet where they are going right now, and ended up entering a duel, and as a result, his father in the Tile sect suffered humiliation to make sure that duel never happened. And that's why he tried to avoid attending this time, and he comments to himself, even though he thinks he has no choice but to attend, he cannot leave junior sister Hong alone, in a place where the Iron Sword sect might have set a trap, and hearing this from afar, she is quite surprised by his attitude, and when our boy passes by her, she becomes very serious and asks if by any chance he is saying that her sect would invite guests just to set a trap for them, and our protagonist turns around and asks if she really doesn't know anything, or if her acting skills are at an even higher level than her martial arts. But she says, very irritated, that just like this afternoon, he seems to be showing a huge inferiority complex in relation to the Iron Sword sect, while he wonders if she really doesn't know anything about what her own people are plotting against them. But she continues, saying that it's true. They consider the Tile sect as a thorn in their side, but even so, the Iron Sword sect doesn't act like a bunch of street thugs. But our boy simply laughs and says he will make a prediction for her at this banquet. Her brother, Xiao Mujan, will create an opportunity to trample on the Tile sect even if he refuses. And eventually, he will turn the Tile sect into a laughingstock. And she says, very irritated, that she misjudged him, and she thought he was an honorable man who would not tolerate injustice. But he is just a lunatic suffering from delusions of persecution. But our protagonist tells her that he also really hopes it's just a delusion of his, and he simply enters the banquet. But now, inside the banquet, that guy from the fortress stands up and starts speaking to everyone, asking if they really think it makes sense for the Tile sect to still be part of the 108 main sects, when an exceptional orthodox sect like the Iron Sword sect does not do it. And even the excellent merchant group is inevitably bound to the Tile sect because of that damn special mission of the 108 sects. It really is a tragic situation, and the people around watching everything start laughing a lot at Hong, because apparently she doesn't have any words to fight back. But another guy comments that it's not that she doesn't want to fight back, she simply can't, because nothing he said is wrong. But in Hong's mind, even though she is suffering humiliation, she is still very happy that instead of senior brother Jin being there, she is the one suffering this. But obviously the guy won't let it go easily, and he turns to junior sister Hong and says that now he wants to hear the stance of the Tile sect. He says that stagnant water is rotten and must be eliminated for the greater good. And he asks if by any chance the young lady agrees, and simply being very nervous and not knowing what to reply, she starts to stammer. But to everyone's surprise, our boy appears right on time, saying that yes, They agree with that opinion. And over in the corner, Moran quietly observes everything. And this guy from the fortress already starts trying to please her a lot, saying that if she were to join them, he asks that she please sit by his side. But she only asks for forgiveness and says that she is there, only to guide the guest. So, she will leave soon, and on the side, Guyin asks how the hell he was with Lady Seong, but our protagonist doesn't even care about him and asks if they could prepare another table for drinks here. But Guyin, very pissed off, starts calling him a bastard and asks if he can't hear what he just said, but our protagonist, very serious, calls him senior brother and says that someone who just sits with folded arms, drinking wine, while his sect is completely insulted and his junior sister is humiliated right in front of him. He wants to know if that is truly what it means to be a senior brother. But over on the side, Hong watches their argument as they stop now and asks Jin why he came here, but our boy starts thinking about other things, because he knows that either way, while everyone is busy with the group from the Tile sect, those two didn't even cast a glance at them. The first is the divine dragon of the sky, Nangang-san, the eldest son of the Nangang family, and part of the dragon and phoenix rank. He was called one of the hidden dragons of Anhui province. And there in the center is the blood wolf of the Iron Sword sect, Seong Mujian, the host of this banquet. But noticing the Q, the guy from the fortress, goes up to Jin and comments that it's really a shame, but his private conversation with Lady Seong will have to wait until next time, because look who we have found here if it isn't Jin's song of the Tile sect. And he says, so, is it correct to assume that you interrupted my conversation with your junior sister because you intend to answer for her? And our boy just stares at him and right after, he takes a piece of chicken and says that he literally agrees. A pond can only remain clean when new water enters. However, that is under the premise that the new water is clean. For example, we have Chongjak Fortress, a rising power in Anhui province, which should have joined the 108 sects a long time ago, but why didn't they succeed? And the kid says that this is because the existing 108 sects are under the Miram Alliance. But our boy says that's not why. It's because of the Chongjak blood incident that occurred 60 years ago, which leaves the kid completely perplexed. But our protagonist continues rubbing salt in the wound, saying that the brothers inside the fortress drew swords against each other for the position of master of the fortress. And don't get him wrong, they are an excellent and strong sect. However, if we had to fight against the underworld, and I were told to trust my back to a group where brothers draw swords against one another, he would rather not. And even the Miram Alliance would naturally feel uncomfortable accepting such a sect as a blood ally, except at that moment, the kid grabs him by the collar and asks how he dares dishonor his fortress. But at that moment, finally, the main character of the evening stands up and asks what the hell he thinks Hei's doing right now. And the nervous kid just backs off completely. But the boy says that showing such disrespect to a guest who came there by the invitation of their sect is the same as disregarding them, but right by his side. Realizing the mistake, his sister asks what the hell he is talking about, since it was Go Yongsa from the fortress who started the fight. But her brother tells her to shut her mouth and not interfere in anything, because he clearly saw this fellow derail and ruin the constructive discussion. But next to Jin's song, Hong Sarahong realizes this is bad, because if senior brother Jin loses his patience, there will be no turning back, but simply our dear protagonist stands up before her and apologizes, saying it seems he has ruined this pleasant banquet, and I have no excuses to offer, young Master Seong. This greatly surprises his sister, Seong Moran, but he continues speaking, saying that he also apologizes to young Master Go for recklessly mentioning the matters of his sect, and that he was hasty, so they will leave now, therefore. He asks that he please let go of his anger and enjoy the rest of the banquet. But obviously the kid keeps glaring at him while he walks away and calls for Hong Saru. But before he can leave, the guy tells him to wait and says that he insulted a guest of the Iron Sword sect in his own home. And if we let you leave unscathed, how would that look for our reputation and as a disciple of the Iron Sword sect and grandson of the sect leader? He cannot simply let this pass with a mere apology. Therefore he, Seong Mujian, challenges him to a duel. Obviously it was all a setup, and seeing this, the girl realizes that it was exactly as Jin's song told her. Meanwhile, our boy starts laughing right then, completely losing it. realizing that there is no point in trying to avoid the matter, and there is no use fighting to prevent what is destined to happen. And simply, he turns to Seong Moran and asks if she saw that. He was completely right, which leaves her very embarrassed on the spot. And our boy thinks that, eventually, it would happen anyway. And so, back in his room, the pavilion leader asks if he really accepted the challenge, and how the hell he plans to deal with the consequences. And you shouldn't have even gone to that banquet in the first place. But our protagonist says that if he hadn't gone, they would have challenged Hong Sarahong instead. And if you're going to scold someone, it shouldn't be me, but senior brother Guin for dragging her to that place. But the old man gets even more pissed off, so Hong Sarahong interrupts the conversation and says that he is right. But even so, you should have restrained yourself. And she asks if he thinks young Master Seong looked like an easy target, just because he beat senior brother Guin, and if he really thinks his techniques will work against the Iron Sword sect. And if by any chance you get hit by that massive sword during the duel, you could actually die. And simply, she starts to almost cry, looking very cute, while our boy just asks her not to cry. And not to worry either, because he accepted the duel, because he has a plan, and who said he was going to die. And she just needs to think about how she will congratulate him when he returns victorious. But the pavilion leader keeps shouting at him, asking how he can make jokes so awkward. But now, in the corner, his own father remains silent, while our boy stares at the old man confidently, and says that he can handle this by himself, and he doesn't need to do anything. He asks him to please just trust him and watch this time. And the old man says, all right, fine. And our boy stares at his father and asks him not to worry too much, because everything will be fine. So then, the next day our boy, still in his room, is surprised by Sarah Hong bursting in all at once. And he asks why she is in such a hurry. And she says that the leader of the external pavilion went to see the leader of the sect. And hearing this, our boy gets shocked and starts running in that direction, while thinking that he told him not to worry because he was afraid something like this would happen. But unfortunately, today on the day of the duel, in the central training ground of the Iron Sword sect, the very thing he feared occurred. And in the midst of everyone, in the center of the arena is our protagonist's father, kneeling in front of the sect leader, and this sect leader apologizes to the chief strategist for causing him concern, but the old man says that either way, he shouldn't mind him, and should mind his own business. But even so, he thinks that rebuking him publicly in front of him, in front of the chief strategist of the Murim Alliance, it seems the Iron Sword sect appears determined to expel the Tile sect from the 108 sects at any cost. Simply put, the protagonist's father bows again and hits his forehead against the ground, saying that his careless son has committed a sin worthy of death, and he begs for his forgiveness. But the old leader says, well, haven't we already heard about this sin worthy of death that your son committed, and his father, with even more weakness, used words that praised the Iron Sword sect, while the old man says that like father, like son, and indeed this brings back memories from 20 years ago. However, to everyone's surprise, our boy steps forward and asks what on earth he thinks he is doing. He begs him to please stand up, asking why he is prostrating himself like a sinner, but his father orders him to stay still, and he asks what father in this world could just stand by and watch his son be unilaterally harmed. But our boy retorts that there is no son in this world who would just stand by, watching his father look so pathetic. But his father, once again, orders him to back down, while our boy begins to clench his fists. But at that moment, young Master Su Yong says that fatherly love is truly incredible. And since his father is banging his head on the ground, begging him to spare his life, it almost brings tears to his eyes. And he says he will let it slide just this once, out of consideration for his father's sincerity. Therefore, he must kneel beside him, right now, and beg for. But right then, our boy draws his sword and points it at him, telling his father that he has already unsheathed his sword, and from now on, his apologies have no meaning. So, he tells him to step back, while saying he just wants to show them that he is not just a man of words, and his father says that he is a foolish child. But our boy says he won't disappoint him, and he should just watch. Then, as young Master Seong drew his sword, our protagonist spoke up, saying he is looking forward to seeing the skill of a Grand Master from the 108 sects, and he wants to see what he can do. And with that, our boy begins to think that this guy was raised as the successor of the sect, and grew up absorbing all of its resources. However, the sword technique of the Iron Sword sect has a specific compatibility matchup against the sword technique of the Tile sect. Tile, which seeks lightness and speed. So first, he will overwhelm him with speed. Using the lower heavens sword technique, the first is the basic form, but right then, that man manages to block the blow, and says he is like a little rat, already blocking the blow, then counterattacking and causing a huge explosion. In observing this, the strategist thinks that he knows the Iron Sword sect is strong, but for him to be pushed back right in the first confrontation, just as the rumors say. The Tile sect really lacks talent, and this Seong Mujian asks if this is all he has, and as expected of the Tile sect, he is nothing special. But quickly our protagonist gets up, telling him to shut his mouth, because this is just the beginning. But obviously, the more he attacks, the more young Master Seong gets excited, because he knows he is only humiliating himself even more, but in Jin Song's mind, he thinks it's a mess, and this guy is absurdly strong. And the kid says that in the past, there was a man, exactly like you, a man from a certain sect, who didn't know his place and insulted the Iron Sword, sect exactly like him, and had a duel against his father, which left our boy very surprised, while his opponent says that he naturally lost, and he paid the price for disrespecting their sect, and he asks if he knows what price he paid, and with the flat side of a glowing hot blade, his back, his chest, and his abdomen were branded as punishment, and he tells our protagonist that the name of that man was Jin Taizan of the Tile sect, which leaves our boy completely perplexed, and he looks straight at his father right then, seeing his reaction. But taking advantage of this, Seong Mujian gives a kick to his stomach, asking how he dared to look away during a duel. But even so, once again our boy gets up, thinking that it makes no sense, while the kid says again, like father, like son, and in this case, it's your lack of brains. While our protagonist thinks that, even if he swallows the humiliation, right in front of him, overcomes the dishonor, and pretends he knows nothing, covering up that shameful history with a smile, it will only repeat itself. So finally, he calms down, and asks if that's what everyone thinks. Then, he advances once more with the lower heaven sword technique, the first basic form, while Seong Mujian says that once again, he is using that outdated technique, and as expected of a disciple of an insignificant sect. But to the surprise of Seong Mujian, our boy dodged the blow, and Jin Song thinks that if that's the case, what he has to do now is prove them wrong. And in the middle of the fight, he starts dodging the blows, which greatly surprises Seong Mujian, who asks what is happening all of a sudden, and how he can do that. But little does he know that our protagonist knows all of his techniques and movements, and very shortly, Seong Mujian asks what kind of trick he used just now, while in the protagonist's head, he knows he has to be stronger, and even stronger than everyone, but he advances. Once more with the lower heaven sword technique, the first basic form, but this time, everything was different, because he landed a direct hit with much more power, to the point where he can change the future. And simply, young Master Seong falls to his knees, wounded, for the first time, while our boy turns to him, very happy, asking if this is all the Iron Sword sect has to offer, but only in the next part of the video. Guys, this is another new work that I'm bringing to you, so if you liked it and want the next part, the goal for this video is 5,000 likes. And of course, don't forget to share this video, which helps me a lot. So, that's all guys. I'm signing off here. See you in the next video. Bye.